Welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're looking at, well, you actually brought this in, this memoir, The Gift. And, well, it's about your uncle.
Yes.
And it's about how he got this chance to kind of relive a part of his life and how that, like, totally transformed his perspective.
Maybe
It's
it's like stepping into a time machine, not just to sort of observe the past, but to actually feel it again.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So it starts with your uncle, um, Wolfgang,
Wolfgang, yeah.
turning 52. And he's joking with his wife about wishing he was 30 again.
Right.
And then, boom, he gets this mysterious birthday present from his nephew,
Yeah.
a voucher for a repatriation experience.
Repatriation.
Like,
What even?
That's a very curious word, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Repatriation usually refers to returning to one's home country.
Mm-hmm.
But in this context, it seems to suggest a return to a former self.
Right. And at first, Wolfgang's like, whatever.
Totally. He's got that been there, done that attitude about his younger years. It's not until his nephew, who's really intrigued by the whole thing, kind of prods him to actually try it out.
That procrastination, that initial reluctance, is something a lot of us can probably relate to, stepping outside our comfort zones.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even when there's intriguing opportunities, it's tough.
Totally. So Wolfgang finally calls the number on the voucher. And it's kind of funny how he describes this in the memoir. He just lies down on his couch, closes his eyes, and goes through this repatriation. Like, he doesn't really explain the mechanics of it, but suddenly he's back in the 1980s, experiencing his life all over again.
It's not just remembering, is it? He's reliving it. He's back in his younger body. He's feeling all the same emotions, facing the same challenges.
It's like he's got this second chance to walk in his own shoes,
Yeah.
but with the awareness of his older self.
Right.
And he's convinced at this point. He says he's going to be a playboy, carefree, all that. But then he gets this card reading, like a fortune teller. And they predict a totally different path for him. Family life, house, kids, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And you can just tell he's like, nope, not my style. I'm going dancing.
That's interesting. It makes you think about how much our past selves can be different from who we become, right? Free will versus destiny. The choices we make, or maybe even fate, shape our lives.
Yeah, and the way he describes those early days as a dancer is hilarious. Like, just picturing him stumbling around the dance floor, trying to impress the ladies, mostly making a fool of himself, really.
Yeah.
But even through those awkward moments, you can sense this need to connect, like finding his rhythm in life.
It shows how these experiences, even something seemingly insignificant like learning to dance, can really impact who we become, It pushes us out of our comfort zone, helps us connect with others.
Exactly. And speaking of connecting with others, he forms these close friendships with his dance buddies, Healy and Harry. They have some crazy times together, going out dancing, getting into all sorts of mischief.
Oh, tell me about Harry.
Oh, there's this one story about Harry on a school trip to England
Yeah.
where he ends up leading the entire train compartment in a drunken sing-along of Scottish folk songs.
Ah, classic Harry. It's a fun story, but it speaks to something deeper, the importance of those shared experiences, camaraderie, our sense of belonging.
Yeah, for sure. And those friendships, they really become a defining part of his youth, like a source of support, a source of laughter as he's, going through the ups and downs of growing up.
Right.
And of course, there's first love, those intense emotions, the heartbreak. I mean, that's just part of it, right?
It's almost like a rite of passage. Those early relationships teach us so much about vulnerability, about intimacy, about the joys and the pains of it all. And seeing how he's reliving those feelings with the wisdom of someone who's been through it all, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And eventually, he meets Kathi, his future wife, at a school dance, of all places. And it seems like their connection was pretty instant. He mentions how different their personalities are, but there's this undeniable spark between them.
That's interesting. Those early stages of romantic attraction are often a mix of similarities and differences. Opposites attract, right? That tension between contrasting personalities can be really dynamic.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how their relationship evolves, how they figure out this whole married life thing, raising a kid, dealing with in-laws, all of it. You get the sense that even though he was initially resistant to settling down, he starts to really appreciate those moments of family life.
It really highlights how relationships can transform us, how our views on love and commitment can change as we mature. What seemed restricting in our youth can become deeply meaningful later on.
Definitely. And he's honest about the tough parts, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The arguments, the compromises, it's not always easy, but they find a way to make it work.
That honesty makes it so much more relatable. Relationships are rarely perfect. It's navigating those challenges, learning to communicate, to compromise. That's what makes a real partnership.
Absolutely. But okay, picture this. In the middle of all this relationship stuff, he also gets super into boxing, like out of nowhere.
Really?
Yeah, he describes the intense training, the adrenaline of his first public fight, even the emotions of winning.
That's so interesting. It's like he's finding fulfillment in something completely different from family life. It speaks to that idea that we're all these multifaceted people, you know?
Mhm.
We need outlets for different parts of ourselves. Boxing seems to be a way for him to channel aggression, to test his limits, to learn discipline.
And you see how those boxing lessons start to spill over into other areas of his life. He starts to notice his temper. He's more mindful of his actions and more determined to reach his goals.
It's a great example of how seemingly unrelated experiences can actually connect and inform each other. The discipline from boxing becomes a valuable skill in his relationships, his work, his whole approach to life.
Yeah, so we have this picture of your uncle in his younger years. A passionate dancer, a budding boxer, a young man figuring out love and family life. But this is really just the beginning. What do you think so far has been the most significant takeaway for him in all of this?
I think it's the ability to view his past with this fresh perspective, to see how those seemingly random moments, big and small, have made him who he is.
That's a great point, and I'm really curious to see how this new awareness affects his decisions as we keep going.
As he's reliving these younger years, I mean, you really start to see this shift in his perspective. Remember how he was so against this whole family life idea at first?
Yeah, like almost afraid of it.
Exactly. But now, as he's re-experiencing those early days with Kathy, the birth of their son, those everyday moments of being a parent, something changes.
It's like he's seeing it all with fresh eyes.
Right. The memoir even describes how he starts appreciating those little things, like his son taking his first steps, bedtime stories, those quiet moments together.
Those small connections.
Exactly. And it's powerful because he's coming to terms with the depth of love and responsibility that comes with fatherhood. And he almost rejected that. It really speaks to how transformative this whole repatriation thing is. He's not just remembering, he's reevaluating, refeeling it all with this new understanding.
There's this one part that really got me. He was talking about his son's first communion,
Oh, yeah.
and he was so lost in his own thoughts, he forgot to sit next to Kathy.
Mm,
And she was obviously upset. And it made him realize how easily we can just get caught up in our own heads and miss those important moments.
that's so true. We can be so well-intentioned but still make mistakes. And those mistakes affect the people we love the most. But it's about recognizing those slip-ups and trying to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about fatherhood. He really reflects on his relationship with Kathy, too.
Right.
The compromises, the arguments, the tough times they went through. It's like he's seeing their journey not as this straight line, but as a dance.
Mm-hmm.
Like two people trying to find their rhythm together.
And what I find fascinating is that he doesn't sugarcoat the tough parts of their relationship. He admits their differences, their communication breakdowns, those times when they just didn't get each other. That honesty is what makes it so real, so relatable.
Totally. He talks about how she internalizes her problems, hoping they'll disappear, while he's more reactive, like explosions.
Ah, yes.
They're constantly trying to find a balance. Her need for peace and his tendency to kind of blow up.
That dynamic is so common. So many couples deal with that. It makes you think about communication styles and how to navigate those differences, expressing your own needs while respecting your partner's.
For sure. And when he talks about his work life, you start to see that same theme popping up again.
Really? How so?
He talks about those early ambitions, that drive to succeed, but also the sacrifices he made.
Oh, yeah.
Like he was so focused on climbing that ladder that he kind of neglected other things, his personal life, relationships, even his own well-being.
It's a struggle so many of us face, that constant pressure to achieve. We forget about our health, our relationships, what really matters.
Yeah, and his story is kind of a wake-up call. Like, are we chasing the right thing?
It makes you reevaluate those priorities.
Definitely. He even mentions going to a film casting call at one point, which is so random for him.
A casting call.
Yeah. It's like he's starting to question everything, who he is, what he wants.
That willingness to step outside his comfort zone, to explore new things, that's growth. It's like he's letting go of those old beliefs that were holding him back.
Yeah, it's pretty inspiring. And it's interesting how he contrasts his journey with his friends' experiences. Like, Healy becomes a successful dance teacher, finds love, not on the dance floor, but in life. And Harry, the prankster, the guy with a plan, he finds his calling, working with young apprentices.
Different paths, different versions of success. It's a good reminder that there's no one right way to live, to be happy.
Exactly. And he also weaves in these observations about the world, like how the workplace is changing, the impact of technology, this sense of disconnection between people.
It's like he's not just looking back at his life, he's observing society as a whole.
Yeah, and it's really thought-provoking.
Mm.
He even tells this funny story about a guy who scams fancy hotels by pretending to be like an honorary consul.
What?
I know. It makes you question those ideas of status and authority.
It's those little observations that reveal something deeper about human nature. We shouldn't take everything at face value.
Right. And there's this really touching part where he's talking about his parents. They decided to sell a portion of their property after this long legal battle.
Oh,
And he
wow.
was really resistant at first, like possessive of his childhood home. But he sees how generous they are, letting go and trusting the next generation. And it shifts something in him, too.
That's a powerful lesson about letting go of attachment, embracing change. It's like that cycle of life we have to let go to move forward.
Yeah. And as he keeps reliving these key moments, those light bulb moments happen more and more. He's questioning his choices, his reactions, his whole approach to life. It's like he's having this conversation with his younger self, offering advice, perspective.
That internal dialogue is so important for growth. It lets us examine our past, see those patterns that aren't working anymore, and make choices that align with who we want to be.
It's amazing to witness the impact of this experience. He's not just remembering, he's reassessing, changing his understanding of himself and the world around him. I'm curious, what's sticking with you so far? What parts of his story are you connecting with? As we get to the last part of your uncle's repatriation, it's pretty clear that this whole journey back to his younger self has really had an impact. Like, he's facing the consequences of past actions, things he didn't say, chances he missed. It's almost like he's looking at his life from a whole new angle, seeing the ripple effects of choices he barely even thought about at the time.
And what really strikes me is his honesty in the memoir. You know, he doesn't try to hide his mistakes. He admits those impulsive outbursts, recognizes how they hurt the people he cared about. It's not just regret, but a real understanding of how our actions can have consequences that last for years.
He even makes a list of things he wishes he had done differently. It's almost like a guide for his younger self, like spend more time with loved ones, tell people you appreciate them, be present in the moment. Makes you wonder if this repatriation isn't just about reliving, but about learning.
It does make you think, doesn't it? Is this just passively replaying the past, or is it an opportunity for actual growth? The fact that he's creating these lists, it shows he's taking it all in, learning from it, and finding ways to use it in his life now.
And he doesn't just keep all these insights to himself. He starts reading books about communication, psychology, even astrology. He's looking for answers not just for himself, but for everyone. Like he's trying to figure out human nature itself.
It's like he's moving beyond self-improvement and connecting his personal journey to something bigger. It shows a real desire for deeper meaning, searching for those universal truths that go beyond our individual lives.
And you can see those insights starting to show up in what he does. He's more patient with his son, more understanding with Kathi, more willing to compromise. He even talks about helping his sister and brother-in-law move. At first, he felt all territorial, but then he saw it as a way to support his family, to put their needs before his own.
It shows how powerful perspective can be. It's not about erasing the past, but using it to make better decisions in the present. He's learning to react differently, choosing empathy over those knee-jerk reactions.
It's almost like he's found a new joy in living. He gets involved in his community, starts cycling, even goes to a tap dancing show with a colleague. Things he never would have considered before are now part of who he is.
It really shows that we can always grow and change. It's never too late to try new things, step outside our comfort zones, and find those unexpected moments of joy.
And in the middle of all of this, he starts writing this memoir, the what we're talking about. It's not just a personal story, but it's full of his thoughts about society, culture, everything. He thinks about technology, the importance of education, the need for more empathy in a world that feels so divided.
He's gone from reliving his life to reflecting on what it means to be human. His journey becomes this way to connect with others, to share what he's learned.
Yeah, and as he finishes his journey, there's this feeling of peace and acceptance that comes through in the writing. He sees how all those experiences, good and bad, have shaped him. He's grateful for the life he has.
He's come to a place of self-awareness. It's not about forgetting the past, but about understanding how it all fits together to make him who he is. He embraces everything, the good and the bad, and sees it all as part of the journey.
He ends with this powerful message like a call to action. Chase your dreams, appreciate the people you love, be present, and never stop learning and growing. It really hits home after seeing his transformation.
His repatriation wasn't just about going back in time, it was a journey inward. He went looking for his younger self and came out with a deeper understanding of who he is now. And by sharing his story, he encourages us to do the same. Look back honestly, learn, and embrace the power of changing our perspective.
If we could sum up his journey into one question for you, it would be this. What if you could relive part of your life? What would you change? And how would that experience affect who you are today? That's something for us all to think about.
This repatriation idea, it goes beyond just one story. It's about how we can all grow and change and learn. It reminds us that our past shapes us but doesn't define us. And it shows that we all have the power to transform ourselves.